Have you ever imagined a king who was loved by his people, yet hated by a nation that would later become a world power? King George III was a complex figure who was known as a loyal family king, a religious leader, and a significant figure in British history. But on the other hand, his name is also immortalized in the United States Declaration of Independence as a symbol of oppression. Who was George III? Was he really the tyrant king depicted in American history books? Or was he simply a victim of turbulent times? King George III was the king of Great Britain and Ireland who reigned for 60 years, from 1760 to 1820, making him one of the longest reigning monarchs in British history. He was born on June 4, 1738, and ascended the throne at the age of 22, after the death of his grandfather, King George II. George III was from the House of Hanover, but he was the first monarch of the dynasty to be born and raised in England and to speak English as his primary language. This made him closer to the British people than his predecessors, who were often considered more German than English. George III was known as a religious, dedicated, frugal king who loved his country and his family very much. He tried to run a stable government and uphold strict moral values. However, his reign was filled with political turmoil and major wars that changed the course of world history. One of the most prominent events of his reign was the outbreak of the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783. Tensions between Britain and the North American colonies were fueled by the tax policies and political controls imposed by the British government. Although George III is often portrayed as a tyrant by American revolutionaries, many political decisions were made by Parliament and its ministers. After a long and grueling war, Britain was ultimately defeated, and in 1783, the United States officially became independent. This defeat was a major blow to the monarchy's reputation and was a major turning point in British colonial history. In addition to the American Revolution, George III also fought a series of other military conflicts, including wars with France during the French Revolution and the reign of Napoleon Bonaparte. Amid threats of invasion and international tensions, Britain managed to maintain its dominance at sea and strengthen its position as a global power. However, economic and social pressures at home also increased, and George III had to deal with a number of domestic crises, including famine, labor protests, and political tensions between conservatives and reformers. One of the most tragic aspects of George III's life was his deteriorating health, particularly his mental illness, which worsened as he aged. He suffered from episodes of mental illness believed to be caused by porphyria or other psychiatric disorders. During these periods, he was unable to carry out his duties as king, and in 1811, after his mental condition had deteriorated, he formally transferred power to his son, George IV, who became Prince Regent. George III spent the rest of his life in isolation, losing his sight and hearing, until his death on 29 January 1820 at Windsor Castle. Although George III was once viewed poorly, particularly in American histories that portrayed him as an authoritarian monarch, his assessment has changed over time. Many modern historians have given George III a more fair and comprehensive view, recognizing his dedication to his country, his commitment to moral principles, and his difficulties in dealing with political pressures and personal suffering. He is no longer seen simply as a symbol of tyranny, but as a ruler facing enormous challenges in a time of rapid and turbulent change. George III's legacy remains a matter of debate, but there is no doubt that he was one of the most influential figures in British and world history in the late 18th and early 19th centuries.